The beeping of hospital machines faded into the background the moment I read her message. Just 7 words, but they rewrote the last 15 years of my life. I earned this. You owe me everything. Attached was a screenshot of our joint account. I stared at it, heart monitor still chirping beside me. IV in my arm, ribs sore from CPR. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sent a single thumbs up emoji. That was all she was getting. If this made your blood boil already, type justice in the comments. My name is Mason Kerr, 46 years old. I'd spent 2 decades managing safety operations at a steel plant in Pittsburgh. A job that paid well but demanded everything. Long hours, rotating shifts, barely any holidays. I didn't mind. It kept the lights on, the fridge full, and my wife Tessa in the lifestyle she seemed to love. Designer handbags, luxury yoga retreats, and a house that looked straight out of an interior design magazine. We didn't have kids. We had ambition. Or so I thought. For months I'd felt something wasn't right. Tightness in my chest. Shortness of breath after even mild exertion. I chalked it up to stress and caffeine until the pain dropped me to my knees during a routine safety drill. I was airlifted to UPMC Mercy, flatlined twice, and came back with a stent in my heart and a scar on my chest. But the real wound wasn't physical. It was seeing that message from the woman I thought I'd grow old with. Celebrating my near-death experience by draining every penny I'd saved. The doctors told me I needed 6 weeks of rest. No work, no stress, no driving. They asked if someone was coming to pick me up the next day. I said yes. I lied. That night, I called my cousin Trey, a welder-turned-mechanic who lived across town. We hadn't been close in years, but I knew I could count on him. Need a place to lie low, I said, and I need you not to tell Tessa I'm alive. His response? My garage door's open. Come through. The next morning, with discharge papers in hand, and nowhere to go, I climbed into Trey's beat-up Chevy and disappeared. No one knew. Not my coworkers. Not my neighbors. Not my wife. And certainly not the man she had coming in and out of our house while I lay in the ICU, because I already knew there was someone else. I just didn't know how far she was willing to go. Yet, the photo wasn't blurry. It wasn't vague. It wasn't open to interpretation. Tessa stood on the front porch of my house, holding a glass of red wine, her hand resting casually on the arm of a man in a navy suit and loafers with no socks. That detail stuck with me. No socks. The kind of arrogant comfort that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're not supposed to be, and not caring. Marla, my old neighbor who used to bring us banana bread, snapped the photo through her blinds and sent it with a single message. You okay, Mason? Thought you should see that. I stared at the photo until the edges burned into my memory. Tessa never laughed like that with me. Not in the last 5 years anyway. That kind of lightness didn't come from grief. It didn't come from someone who thought their husband had almost died. It came from someone who was celebrating, someone who believed they'd already won. And in that moment I understood something chilling. Tessa didn't think she lost me in that hospital. She thought she finally got rid of me. That night I sat in Trey's garage, the scent of oil and rust grounding me while my heart thudded slow and deliberate. I pulled out my phone and accessed a set of accounts Tessa never knew existed. Not because I was hiding them, but because she never cared to ask. She left the boring stuff to me. The emergency fund, the Roth IRA, the industrial equipment leasing side hustle that paid me in quarterly checks she never saw. I logged in. Everything was untouched. That's when the math started to shift in my favor. Trey sat across from me, wiping his hands with a rag. What's the play? He asked. You just gonna let her take it? I shook my head slowly. No, I said. She thinks she stole my future. What she really did was give me a reason. I spent the next 3 hours mapping everything out. Bank withdrawals, her recent spending patterns. She had gotten bold in my absence, booking spa packages, transferring money between accounts, even paying for landscaping I never approved. The next morning I went quiet and cold. I wasn't mourning anymore. I was planning. First I contacted HR at the plant, explaining my medical situation and asking about leave benefits. Turns out I had short-term disability coverage. 60% of my salary for up to a year, automatic direct deposit. Tessa didn't know a thing about it. That income was mine, legally protected. Then I contacted an old friend from high school, Marcus Ledbetter, now an attorney who specialized in property law and financial disputes. We met in a coffee shop on the edge of town. I handed him a folder with screenshots, bank records, photos and timelines. He leafed through them slowly, then looked up. This is bad. he said. For her. Very bad. I nodded once. Then let's make it worse. Because what Tessa didn't know, what her smug little boyfriend didn't know, was that the house she paraded him around in, it wasn't theirs. Thanks to a quiet refinance I'd done 3 months earlier, it was now entirely mine. Marcus spoke like a man who'd been waiting for a case just like this. Most people don't see the trap until they've already stepped in it, he said, flipping the deed to the house. But you built the trap. And she walked in blind. His voice had an edge of admiration, but I wasn't proud. Not yet. Pride was for after the wreckage. Right now I needed precision. I needed to become someone who no longer begged for fairness. I needed to enforce it. The next step was subtle. I gave Marcus power of attorney over financial matters related to the house. That way I wouldn't have to speak to Tessa directly when it all went down. I didn't trust myself to stay calm if I saw her face. Trey helped me set up cameras on the property line. Nothing invasive, just legal surveillance to document foot traffic, visitors, and any personal property removal attempts. We both knew something was coming. People like Tessa, when cornered, don't beg. They bite. A week passed in quiet observation. The cameras caught the Navy suit guy. Turns out his name was Blake Renshaw, coming and going from my home like he'd paid the mortgage. I watched him fix sprinklers, carry groceries in, take my dog for walks. Every detail cut deeper than the last, but I held the line. Collected footage, took notes, let the story write itself. Tessa hadn't just moved on. She'd replaced me, efficiently, without hesitation. But she forgot that every new coat of paint was slapped on a foundation she didn't own. Then came the twist. One night, Marcus called me. I ran a background check on your wife's new friend. Blake's not just a hobby partner. He's got history. What kind of history? I asked. Bankruptcy. Fraud. 2 lawsuits from past business partners. And a suspended real estate license. He's a con. Mason. And your wife. She's either in on it, or being played harder than you were. That changed everything. My silence wasn't just revenge anymore. It was protection. I had to act fast. We drafted a cease and desist letter forbidding Blake from occupying the property. Since the home was now legally under my name alone, his presence there constituted trespassing. Marcus delivered it the next morning, served via courier, while Tessa and Blake were sipping iced tea on my back porch. According to the courier, Blake turned red. Tessa laughed like it was a joke, but neither of them laughed when they read the last line of the letter. Failure to comply will result in criminal trespass charges and civil litigation. 3 days later, Tessa showed up at Trey's garage uninvited. She must have figured out where I was through some old paperwork or a mutual acquaintance. She looked different, less polished, more frantic. Her tone tried to sound civil, but her eyes gave her away. "We need to talk, Mason," she said, clutching her designer bag like a shield. I stayed seated, elbows resting on the workbench. "Anything you have to say to my lawyer." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're really doing this?" I just stared. She sighed. "Look, I made a mistake. Okay? I panicked. I thought you were going to die and leave me with nothing. But I wasn't dead. And she hadn't panicked. She had planned. I stood slowly. You didn't panic when you wiped the savings. You didn't panic when you had Blake walking around my house like he owned the place. And you sure as hell didn't panic when you toasted your freedom with wine while I was hooked up to machines." She opened her mouth, probably to spin another excuse, but I walked past her and closed the door behind me. Trey leaned against the wall outside. "Arms crossed, she's unraveling," he said. "Good. Let her." That night, Marcus called with an update. "We have enough for a restraining order against Blake. And guess what? He's got priors. Misdemeanor trespassing in Florida. He doesn't want this heat." I asked about the money. "We're getting closer," he said. "There's a hidden account in her name, opened 6 months before your heart attack. Someone's been helping us trace deposits. Small amounts under the radar, regular as clockwork. And guess whose name is linked as an authorized user?" "Let me guess," I said. "Blake Renshaw." Bingo. That confirmed it. They'd been siphoning funds behind my back. Not just during the hospital stay, but long before. My trust wasn't just broken. It had been weaponized against me. Tessa hadn't just left me while I was down. She'd been preparing the escape while I was still out there earning for both of us. And Blake? He was more than a replacement. He was her accomplice. It wasn't just betrayal. It was conspiracy. We filed a motion the next morning. Asset freeze on all accounts tied to her or Blake, plus a temporary injunction preventing either of them from selling or moving any property. When they got wind of it, Everything changed. Blake put his house on the market. Tessa sent a long, emotional email to Marcus's office. Subject line: "Please tell Mason to stop. This is getting out of hand." Attached was a photo of us from our honeymoon. Manipulation in JPEG form. Tessa never understood digital footprints. In her world, photos were just memories. But in reality they were timestamps. Coordinates. Stories told without words. Her emotional bait. The honeymoon photo she attached to her email was a gift she never meant to give. Marcus's assistant, a forensic tech named Elisa, flagged it immediately. The photo had been edited. Yes. Cropped. Filtered. But buried in its metadata was something far more valuable. A GPS tag. One that led not to our honeymoon destination in Bali, but to a luxury condo complex in Minneapolis. The date: 3 months ago. The same weekend she told me she was on a girls' retreat. We'd been chasing shadows, thinking Blake was the beginning and end of it. But this condo unit, this hidden meeting point, was in someone else's name entirely. A name Marcus didn't recognize. "Cole Branton," he said, tapping his desk. "Financial advisor, private wealth consultant, and according to public records, owner of the Minneapolis property." "You think there's a third player?" I asked. "I think we've only seen the surface," Marcus replied. "And the deeper we dig, the worse it smells." While Marcus pulled property records, I called Megan, my goddaughter and an accounting whiz working at a data analytics firm in Chicago. I'd helped pay for her degree. She owed me nothing, but when I asked for her help, she didn't hesitate. I gave her the name Cole Branton, the dates and the account numbers Marcus had uncovered. "You're looking at laundering," she said 2 days later. "Not criminal yet, but close. Funds moving in, getting renamed as consulting fees, then funneled through real estate purchases. Someone's been hiding money for years." Tessa wasn't just planning an exit. She was building a safety net with someone who knew exactly how to protect dirty money. Blake was just the decoy, the emotional affair masking the financial betrayal, the real brain behind it. Cole Branton, a man I'd never met, never heard of, a man who had been using my money to secure their future. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was the mark. Marcus filed a formal subpoena for Cole's financial records. Tessa's lawyer immediately filed an objection. The gloves were fully off now. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet, silent, watching. I even sent Tessa a message for the first time since the hospital. Just 4 words. "You picked the wrong one." No threats. No promises. Just truth. Because I wasn't the man she'd left behind anymore. I was the one preparing her downfall in slow, legal, unstoppable layers. Megan's voice was steady, but I could feel the tension through the phone. "The wire transfer was sent 2 weeks before your heart attack," she explained. "It went from your equipment leasing business account to a trust, one that names Cole Branton as the trustee and Tessa as the sole beneficiary." My chest tightened, but this time it wasn't my heart. It was the kind of cold that grips your spine when you realize you've been robbed with a smile instead of a weapon. "It was 35 grand, she added, just under the threshold for automatic bank reporting. I didn't remember authorizing any wire transfer. I would never have moved that kind of money without a discussion. And certainly not into a trust with Tessa's name on it. "They forged something," Marcus said when I told him. "We'll pull the authorization form if the signature doesn't match yours, and it won't. We've got forgery and wire fraud on the table." The walls were closing in, and for once not on me. Tessa had tried to bury this move deep in the accounts she never thought I'd revisit, but in her arrogance she forgot the most important rule. When a man has nothing left to lose, he digs deep. And the deeper I went, the more I found. A second trust, more than one alias tied to Cole Branton, other property purchased in Wisconsin under a shell LLC. Everything was in motion, quietly, quickly, like they thought I'd never wake up. Marcus set up a meeting with a federal fraud investigator. "You're not the only one Cole's worked with," the agent said. "He's already on our radar. Your wife just bought herself a front row seat to a federal investigation." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. My whole life I'd avoided trouble, paid every bill, worked every shift, followed every rule, and now I was watching my name dragged into a criminal conspiracy by the person I'd once trusted with everything. But I stayed quiet. The kind of quiet that unsettles people who are used to manipulating their way out of messes. Tessa sent 3 more texts that week, each more desperate than the last. "Mason, I'm scared. We were just trying to secure a future. Please don't do this." She didn't realize it had already been done. All I did was shine a light on it. Then came the final crack. I received a call from Blake. Not his number, But I knew that voice. "We need to talk," he said. Tessa lied to both of us. My silence must have scared him. "Look, I didn't know she was moving your money. She told me you knew that it was just being repositioned." I swear to God, man. I hung up without a word. Because Blake wasn't just scared. He was starting to turn. The day the federal agents knocked on Cole Branton's door, everything changed. Not just for him, but for Tessa, for Blake and for me. Cole's attorney tried to push back, but under pressure, Cole folded faster than anyone expected. He named names. He shared emails. He turned over encrypted records. The agents called Marcus directly. "Your client's ex-wife was part of an ongoing scheme to reroute and hide assets under fraudulent trusts. She's now a cooperating subject of interest. The man I had once trusted with my life had been used as a bank account. My business, my savings, my future. Leveraged and stolen without my consent. But now, finally, the tide was turning. Marcus fast-tracked an emergency court order to seize and freeze all remaining assets associated with Tessa and the shell companies Cole created. It passed within the hour. I received the notification on my phone while drinking black coffee in Trey's garage, the same place where my silence began. Now it was the scene of my quiet victory. And then, as if on cue, Blake cracked. He showed up at Marcus's office uninvited, demanding to speak. My attorney didn't turn him away. He let him talk, then recorded the entire thing. Blake confessed to helping Tessa with the fake wire signature, claimed she told him it was a formality and that Mason would never know. He even admitted to moving personal items out of the house slowly in case I didn't survive. He thought it would earn him leniency. What it earned was evidence, and lots of it. That night, I sat with Marcus and watched the entire recording. "You want this entered into evidence?" he asked. I nodded. "Let's bury them." The next morning, Marcus delivered everything to the court. Blake's confession, the trust papers, the doctored wire form, and even the video from the day Tessa laughed on my porch with a man who thought I'd died. Judge Renner didn't take long to issue his ruling. Tessa's financial claims were invalidated. The prenup she forgot we'd signed 10 years earlier, now backed by fraud, was enforced. She lost all rights to the house, the accounts, and even the insurance policy she once begged me to open in her name. She tried to call one last time. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Everything that needed to be said was already stamped, signed, and legally binding. The woman who thought she was clever enough to steal a life ended up unraveling her own. Blake, he vanished, most likely hiding from both the law and Tessa. Cole, indicted, facing federal charges. And me, I was free, scarred but whole. 3 months after the court slammed the final gavel, I stood in the doorway of my new home, a modest cabin just outside the city limits. Quiet, private, untouched by betrayal. The dog she used to ignore now slept peacefully at my feet. The air smelled of pine and ashwood, not lies and perfume. And in my hand I held the decree that made it official. The house, the business, the remaining assets, all mine. No appeals, no negotiations, just truth, sealed by law. And her name nowhere on it. It's strange, the calm that comes after the storm. You expect relief. What you don't expect is clarity. Tessa hadn't just stolen money. She tried to rewrite my story. She tried to frame me as the villain in a life I built from nothing. She thought silence meant surrender. What she never understood was that silence is sometimes just the sound of a trap being set. Every smile I forced, every word I didn't speak, it was strategy. A slow burn path to justice. And in the end, she wasn't just exposed, she was erased. Blake disappeared completely after his taped confession made its way to federal hands. Cole Branton was indicted for multiple counts of financial conspiracy and wire fraud. Tessa, she moved to Austin, took a job under her maiden name, and according to Megan, rents a small one-bedroom apartment. No more spa weekends. No more wine on stolen porches. Just the silence of consequence. She never got the apology she wanted, because I never owed her one. She wanted me to be angry, emotional, irrational, but what I gave her instead was undeniable. I kept my promise to Megan, used a portion of the recovered funds to pay off the remainder of her tuition. That girl's gonna be a powerhouse attorney one day, and when she is, I'll be sitting in the front row, clapping louder than anyone. Trey and I still talk every day. He says I should write a book. I tell him I already did, just not on paper. Every signature, every filing, every court ruling, it was my story written in stone. And now, I work from home, running my leasing business with a smaller crew, a tighter budget, but full control. I take walks every evening, cook my own meals, and sleep better than I ever did in that big beautiful house filled with hidden lies. Some scars still ache, especially when the weather turns, but I wear them like armor now, because survival isn't just about making it through, it's about rebuilding better than before. People ask if I'll ever trust again. Maybe. One day. But for now, I trust myself. That's enough. And as for Tessa, she taught me the most valuable lesson I'll ever learn, that losing everything is sometimes the only way to find yourself. The end. If you felt that justice was served, comment silent power below and share this with someone who needs to be reminded. Your silence is never weakness, it's strategy.